Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. I do appreciate it. And make sure you leave some comments. Always welcomed. So today I thought I would do a little bit of a comparison video. On the left is my pretty much brand new 2024 KTM 350 SXF. It does have some older plastics I had on the 300. Is on the 350 now. So, and then on the right is the 2023 KTM 300 SX. So in my opinion, these are probably two of the best motocross bikes you can get right now. Obviously the two-stroke on the right and the four-stroke on the left. So give you a little bit of background, some context, and then we'll get into comparing them a bit and let you know what my thoughts are. So I'm 5'11", currently 202 pounds, still a little heavy. Normally I'm down to like 190, but I was as heavy as 226. So lost a few pounds. And coming off, I had a 2019 Honda CRF 450. And then my last bike was a 21 and a half factory edition KTM 450. And I sold that last fall and bought the KTM 300 SX, which I've been riding this year. So I just recently purchased the 350 SXF, and you know, after reading a lot, watching a bunch of videos and reviews, it's supposed to be kind of that sweet spot of power, weight, handling, and you know, I'll give you my thoughts on that in a bit. So first off, the 300 SX. I would say the 300 SX is a phenomenal motorcycle. You know, prior to this, the YZ250, I think, was the standard on the two-stroke. Yeah, the KTMs in 17 came out with the counterbalancer, and there was some, you know, some modernization of that. But power delivery with the carburetor on the old bikes was still relatively the same. And for all practical purposes, you know, a YZ250 is excellent even today, you know, against these 300 SXs. So not bashing on the YZs at all, but these new throttle body injected, fuel injected two-strokes are really something unique in my opinion, because the window where they make power is much broader than a traditional two-stroke. For example, a YZ250, you know, there are going to be spots you have to clutch it quite a bit on, and makes good power. But like any two-stroke, you have to keep it in the right RPMs, and you know, you're not really able to lug it around as you could with a modern four-stroke. So the 300 SX, what I like about it is it's a super balanced chassis. I know that a lot of the, you know, reviews in motocross magazines and stuff have said, oh, it takes a long time to break them in. I think that's more for the four strokes, you know, like the 450s, and maybe some of the other four strokes as well. But on this 300 SX, I really didn't notice a break-in period. The bike felt really good handling wise from day one. So love the weight, the handling of the motorcycle. Super nimble, you know, overall the rider triangle really well. It works really well, so really like all that. The biggest thing I like is the power delivery. You know, it makes power in a broad window. It has a lot of torque, even relative, I think, to a 250 SX. So, you know, a 250 SX I think is great, but I do think on these 300s you can lug them a little bit more. What I did was I went up one tooth in the rear from the 49 to the 50, and that allows me to pull third gear out of corners a little better. So really enjoying the you know, the 300 SX. I can corner these amazing, especially in rutted corners. The bikes just have really good lean angle, that lean in angle of I got to get in and out of here quick without a lot of effort. I feel like any two-stroke does that, in my opinion, better than a four-stroke, and I think that's a combination of no engine braking as well as just that light, nimble feeling. So super thrilled with that. Moving over here quickly to the you know, 24 350 SXF. So phenomenal motorcycle. I've got two rides at two different tracks on it currently. So So as I said, I just picked this up last week, relatively brand new. It's got about 2 hours on it. And what do I notice about this 350? So one is it has really good power overall, and it is super light. And so I'll give you a little bit more details. When you ride this motorcycle, you know, it's got good low end, you know, off the bottom. It's got good low end power. It's got great mid range and a phenomenal top end. That doesn't mean you have to hold it wide open to go fast on it, but it does favor that a little bit. So if you are revving it out, you're going to be rewarded, I feel like, and that's where it makes its peak power. But surprisingly, and I think this is true on the 23s and up, obviously this is a 24, same basic bike, minus the graphics. They do have more grunt than the older generations, and I feel that's helpful. Now, these stock run a 52 rear sprocket, and I feel like that offers pretty good, you know, pulling power out of the corners. You know, the bike is super light relative to a 450. That's the biggest thing I notice is, my gosh, the weight on this thing feels like it's 15 pounds lighter. It literally feels like, you know, somebody cut 15 pounds off your 450. And what does that mean? Well, it's not just, okay, the bike's not going to tire me out as fast, but it means that I can lay it over into a corner and find a rut, or, you know, get into that berm in and out quick. Whereas on the 450, I feel like, yeah, they're great, but the 450s, in my opinion, tend to push a lot in the corners. Like, it's a lot harder on a 450 to take inside lines and carry momentum, rutted or non-rutted tracks. And, you know, I'll be honest, you know, I don't mind eating some humble pie and saying that, hey, you know, there's no way I can use the power on a 450, and I'm willing to bet that 80% of the motocross riders out there cannot use all of the power on a 450. And even if you can, you're not doing it in an efficient manner, and you will be amazed at what that 100 cc's less will do in terms of your lap times. That's really what convinced me to try a 350. Is I watched a bunch of the videos on lap times, and quite frankly, my 450, I could ride it like 3 laps at pace, maybe, and then you know, then I have to back it off. And I feel like if you try to, you know, ride those when you're tired, you know, like any bike, but especially on the 450, they're just really, you know, explosive, violent. They can be, and they can fatigue you pretty quick. So overall, the 350, super lightweight. It's not even a comparison to the 450, even though they're only about a pound difference, where the 350 I think is maybe a pound lighter. Overall, just way easier to maneuver, doesn't tire me out as much. In terms of the power, the one area where I feel like the 350 is kind of deceiving is it makes power everywhere. Sometimes, like in deep loamy sand, I feel like I wish I had a little bit more grunt coming out, but the reality is it puts the power to the ground. And you know, if I'm talking about coming into a corner super lazy in third gear and then just grabbing a big handful, this will still pull me out, but obviously not as easy as a 450 would. The difference with this bike though versus the 450 is, you know, you can carry your momentum around the track a lot easier, and I feel like a lot quicker than you can on the 450s. So overall, this thing has plenty of power, I would say, for 80% of you out there. I don't think you're going to be squawking about, oh, it doesn't have enough power. So, okay, both of these bikes are bone stock, except for I have cone valves on the SXF. They were on the 300 SX, and then the rear shock is used to be on the 300 SX. I swapped it over to the SXF, and that's a revalve by factory connection with a bladder kit, and obviously a spring that's you know, for my weight. So in terms of overall comparison, so I'm gonna go through a couple categories and just give you my opinion based on my thoughts. I have 13.5 hours on the 300SX and 2 hours on the SXF. This is kind of my initial comparison review. I'll do a few more comparison videos with riding footage so you can kind of see the difference on the track as well. And then we'll do some lap time comparisons as well. But okay, if I'm picking a bike to ride for fun, meaning I'm gonna go to the practice track, I might race 6 times a year. I'm gonna go ride at my local moto track. I'm gonna go ride at some buddies' private tracks. And I just wanna go ride my dirt bike and look forward to it and have fun. I'm buying the 300SX. It is by far a much funner motorcycle than anything else I've ridden. And for comparison, I'm not new to two-strokes. I mean, I grew up racing them. I collect vintage bikes. I have a lot of CR500s, KX500s. And so, you know, I'm pretty experienced with the two-strokes already. But this 300 is just super easy to ride. And it's super fun. And I'm actually, I haven't done the lap times with the 300 and the 350, but with the 300 and the 450, I'm definitely quicker on the 300SX. So if I'm buying one bike to do it all, kinda, I'm buying the 300SX. I'm also buying the 300SX if I'm gonna race and I can only have one bike, and you know, I want something that I can be smooth on, but yet, you know, have a lot of fun. I'm still buying that 300SX. In my opinion, you can't go wrong with that. The 350, if I'm gonna race the entire season and try winning a championship, whether it's a vet championship, an open class, whatever the case may be, and I'm just gonna race and pound motos during the week, and I want the most competitive bike for motocross, I'm probably gonna choose the 350, and I will tell you why. I think for the majority of riders, you know, riding a 4-stroke is a little bit easier than riding the 2-stroke for all but the most experienced. Not to say that that 300 is by any means hard to ride, it's not. But I think for the guys who are just lazy, they don't want to shift a ton, and they just kind of want to putt around the track, I think getting out on the 350 is going to be the way to go. Or the guy that wants to be competitive in his open class, or a non-CC, you know, even against the 450s, I think these things are way faster than they need to be. So I have no doubts that the 350 would be super competitive at the races. What are some of the differences? Okay, even though relative to their peers, you know, I would say the 300 has the lightest feel because there is no engine braking. Because it is a 2-stroke, it's very free-flowing and it's very easy to ride in a number of conditions. 350, super easy to ride as well, but you notice the engine braking of the 4-stroke. So you're definitely going to notice when you let off the gas that roar, right? It's going to slow you down. Not as much as a 450. It's not terrible, but if you're comparing the 300 to the 350, you will definitely notice that. And that is something I feel like you have to adjust on your technique for corners. At least I do in rutted turns. So I can jump on that 300SX and go through like rutted switchbacks really easily without the bike, you know, without feeling like I got to dab my foot, with keeping my feet on the pegs, just because I know that the balance of the bike is going to flow through the corner and there's no engine braking. That could also be because I grew up riding 2-strokes. When I get on the 4-stroke, I have to remind myself to keep the same kind of throttle position, just smooth on the throttle through those, even just so slightly, because when you try to coast through a rut, or just, you know, you're kind of just trying to get through a quick switchback, I do notice the engine braking. The other thing is you will have to shift the 300SX a little bit more than you will the 350. And the reason for that, I believe, is because the 2-stroke, you know, cycles through the gears a little bit quicker than that 350 does. So the bike kind of spools up a little quicker, therefore I have to shift up and down more frequently. I would say not as much as a traditional like 2-stroke, but definitely more than the 350. And on the 350, while it rewards you for revving it and ringing it out, you can still lug it. But I would say that you still need to be in the right gear for the corners or the obstacles you're coming to. So I feel like one difference on the 350 and the 450 is if you're coming into a corner in third on a 450, you can just roll the power on, and it'll pull you out of it, even if you're not even close to the right gear. Now, that's not the right way to be riding, but let's face it, a lot of guys do it. Whereas the 350, if I'm coming into a corner, I'm getting down into second gear just because I know that that's the right gear for that corner. So even though I have to shift the 300 more, I'm not shifting that much less on the 350, but there is a difference. Handling wise, I feel like stability, I would give the nod to the 350 ever so slightly. You know, going down a high speed straightaway with some chop, you know, we're talking 47 to 52 mile an hour straightaways, you know, something in that range. I feel like the weight, the inertia of the 350, it just feels a little bit more planted. And then the 300. Not that the 300 is twitchy like a wet dog shaking its head or an old CR250, just that you will feel that chassis under you a little bit more on the 300 because it is lighter. And I feel like even when you're on the gas on both bikes, the 350 is just a little bit more planted. Couple of other things. When you jump them, I mean, they're both about the same, obviously. You know, on the 4-stroke, I feel like it's still a little bit heavier, not like a 450 at all, but if I'm just comparing the 300 to the 350, it's definitely, you know, got a little bit more weight to it, but nothing at all like a 450. And I would say I would give the nod slightly to the 2-stroke for the lightness and the overall feel of the bike, but that does come with the slight trade-off of stability and handling on the high-speed stuff. So if you're, you know, if you want the most planted of the two bikes, I would say get the 350. Cornering wise, I think they're both super nimble in the corners. Like I said, other than the engine braking in deep ruts and just learning the technique for that, where I haven't ridden the 4-stroke since last year, I feel like that's just a technique thing with me that I got to get better on. But I do notice the engine braking, and I just like the way that the 2-strokes go through the corners a little bit freer. They just feel a little, you know, a little easier in that regard. In terms of putting the power to the ground, both bikes have tremendous power, but I feel like that 350, you know, is it puts the power to the ground a little bit easier than the 300. I feel like on a nice loamy track, the 300 is awesome. When the track gets a little bit dried out, a little bit less traction, you got to use the clutch a little bit more and cover that. You know, not a ton, or you can switch to, I guess, the other map on the 300, but I only run map 2, and I don't have any issues with it. It's just a matter of, you know, knowing how to ride the 2-stroke and not breaking the tire loose. Whereas the 350, you know, because it is a 4-stroke, it has that, you know, deep chugging kind of power where I feel like it's a little bit more favorable on slick tracks or hard pack tracks. So anyways, long story short, 2 phenomenal motorcycles. If somebody was going to say, here, go buy a 450, you can buy any 450 you want, or you can choose one of these 2. I'm taking a 350 and a 300 any day. I think for me, it's about, at this point, you know, I'm not going to set any national records. I'm not going to turn pro. I ride because it's fun. I ride because I like to ride with my friends and my buddies, and I still want to beat them, and I still want to do the occasional race. So I'm still competitive in that regard, and I want the best bike for me, and these are 2 of those best bikes, I feel. You can't go wrong with either of them. It just depends on which one you want. Anyways, look forward to making a few more videos on track with some GoPro footage. So appreciate you guys all tuning in. Thanks and have a great day.